Hi, everyone, and welcome to ABA and MIA, where real talk meets real practice. I'm Corelix.
And I'm Miriam, and we're here to break down ABA, autism, and the everyday life of the 305.
With compassion, clarity, and a little Miami spice. So grab your cafecito and let's get into
Let's
it.
get into it.
Mm. So, last time, I think we had a really nice session answering some questions that we received from our viewers across all platforms. And we thought we would do the same today. We have time to answer 3 questions from parents that we received, parents of children with autism. And we're ready. Are you ready, Miriam?
Let's do it.
Okay, let me shake it up. Let's see what the first question is. The first question is, how can I cope with public meltdowns when I'm exhausted and overwhelmed? How can
All
I
right.
cope with my child's public meltdowns when I'm exhausted and overwhelmed?
So, first, I want to tell parents and let them know that you're not alone and you're not failing. Public meltdowns are very emotional and incredibly stressful. So, I think the best plan is first be calm and have a safe environment for your child. Those are the two important things I feel like a lot of parents need to know. There has to be a plan. And once you have a plan, you feel more confident. Once you feel more confident, then you're not going to become stressful. So always have a plan before you get into the community outing. I know that's kind of hard juggling around with probably maybe two siblings, three siblings, but it's very important to just be more confident because if you're not confident, then your child's going to read that body cue, the facial cue expressions, and then they're going to be stressed out, which means you're going to be stressed out and no one's calm. So that's the first thing. So there should be like a proactive strategy. You should have a game plan. So if you, before the behavior occurs, that you know every time you go to the toy aisle or the candy section, you want to prevent things from happening. So, stating the rules of what's going to happen if your child is being, having engaging in a tantrum behavior when it's always for candy or a toy. So, you're going to state the rule. So, you wanted to make it very clear. Number one, let's we're going to go get the cart. Number two, we're going to pick one toy or one candy, and that's the rule. And then once we're all done, then you can get your candy. You have to wait. So if we don't follow the rules, then we're going to be all done in a hole. So if depends on your child, they're a visual learner, I highly suggest showing a visual. Like if they can read, you can write them in sentences. If they can't read, then you can actually, present pictures of the steps of what you're going to be doing while you're doing this community outing. Then after that, I would be prepared. Once your child has that tantrum behavior and they're getting upset and they're yelling and they're screaming, what do you do next? So the best game plan is okay, if your child is in the cart and their belt, they have their little, belt in there and they're just in the cart, I would just leave the premises. I would leave the whole community area and have them breathe outside of the actual grocery store or wherever you're at, Target, take them out and remove them from the environment and let them calm down and then say, do you want to try again? We need to be calm and then kind of reset and state the rules again. If your child's a big boy and you pick them up, they're going to kick, they're going to throw, they're going to destroy things, I would not do that. I would just let them find the area that they're safe and let them just, wait it out, wait out their tantrum, have them stay calm. And then once they're calm, then it's the best way to approach them. And then obviously, not everything's going to be perfect. There are going to be people walking through the aisle and judging you as a parent, and they're going to be, you know, saying, like, approaching the situation. They're going to insert themselves. I would just be very direct with them and say, hey, listen, I know what I'm doing. Please, let me handle this. You're just going to make the behavior worse. If you let that parent know that, or that person know that, then they'll, understand. If you want to just let people know they have special needs or they have autism, people will completely understand. Like, I had a situation where I was at the gym, and one of the members were looking at, one of the employees, they had autism, and she would keep cleaning the actual machine. And then the club member was like, why are they doing this? Why are they being so rude and, like, making statements and stuff like that? Like, an employee shouldn't be acting like that. So they reported to the other employee, and they're like, expressing their feelings like, this is not appropriate, blah, blah, blah. And so the employee said, well, they have autism. And then that member was saying, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I understand now. So I'm going to back away and let them do their thing. So I think once you let people know publicly, they will completely understand and not insert themselves. Another proactive strategy is telling the employees, like, before you get in. I used to do this a lot. Parents were very proactive and said, I'm okay with telling the employee, hey, my kid has autism. We're going to be in that candy aisle, and that's where he's going to have his meltdown. So be prepared. And so that employee will let other customers know, hey, you can't be in this area because there's a kid that has special needs and they need that area. So that's something I would pre-plan, if I was a parent. And the most important thing I would say is being calm is the best, because if you're calm, your child will be calm. If you're not calm, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to mess with my mom today because she's stressed out and she's going to give in. And so that's the most important thing, I believe. So I think that's how I would answer the question. What would you think, Corellix?
Yeah, I think you touched on some really important topics. I really love the fact that you touched on, like, the fact that the parent, mom, dad, grandparent, whoever it is that's out in the community with the child, really needs to make sure that they're sharing their calm with the child, right? Very early learners, young children, learn very well through imitation. So if you're telling the child to calm down in a way that's not so calm, if you're screaming at the child, stop screaming, or, I told you not to grab that, or, right, then that is what they might learn to imitate, right? With repetition. So I really think it's important for caregivers of special needs children to remember that for them to be in the right mindset to handle public meltdowns, or even just, right, private meltdowns in the home can be very difficult, but public meltdowns much more so, because in the public eye, then you might feel scrutinized, or you might feel judged, or you might feel embarrassed. And so all of these negative emotions come into play, and it's important that you feel centered, right? If you are the adult in charge of keeping the peace and of sharing your calm, then it's important to just realize what you need to be in that mindset. Because as caregivers, we often think of ourselves last, right? Especially when we have a job and a husband and one child or two children or three children, then that primary caregiver's needs usually takes, like, last place. So I think I would say it's important for you to take care of yourself and know what you need to be in that right mental state, so that you can then emulate the correct behavior for your child. And I think what you also said about practicing honestly. I mean, you said something else, but I call it, it's just practice. Like perfect practice makes perfect, right? And so
Yeah.
if you take the time to speak to the store manager and build a relationship and say, hey, we're going to practice something. It might not go very well. Just know that if my child happens to make a mess or whatever in your aisle, we'll come back. I have, we'll come back and we'll make it right for you. Um, I think that goes a long way. Like you said, people generally are very understanding with the special needs population. Um, and that's definitely a way to get things moving in the right direction is practicing and knowing that it's not going to be perfect the first time, maybe not the second or the third either, but the more that you practice, then the better you're going to get with your ability to handle the situation, and the more practice your child has in getting it right himself also. So it's like you're both learning together how to navigate a difficult situation.
Exactly. And the more the opportunities presents itself, the more your child will get better. It's just like you said, consistency is very key. And that's what ABA is all about. Staying consistent, implementing the same procedures or the intervention that is, required for that specific behavior, and not giving up. I know, like, sometimes you see, like, oh, they just had a bad meltdown. And then sometimes you might see regression because there was maybe like inconsistency coming in. Like maybe we started it 1 month and then now we're starting it within 5 weeks, 6 weeks, things like that. I would stay consistent and don't feel like you're walking on eggshells either. Because the more you expose your child to community outings, the more they'll get comfortable, and they're
Yeah.
not going to be so having anxiety. That's another thing. Their fear is, this is unknown for me. Sometimes when you take me to these places, I have no idea what's going on. There's the new people, new environment, new stimuli, affecting their sounds or like aversive to specific things. The more you expose them, and they'll feel comfortable and you'll feel comfortable taking them places. Because if you just say, oh, I'm just going to keep them at home, I don't feel comfortable, then that's just going to shelter them. And they're not going to want to go outside either. And that's not a way to live based on walking on eggshells your whole life. So,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
beautiful point. We do have quite a lot of families who share the fact that they're very isolated in their homes, in the four walls of their homes, that they don't feel like they can be integrated into the community. And once they build their community and once they feel confident in their ability, um, because at first, you practice these things at home and you role play. And again, your clinical team should definitely help you to prepare, right? So you can role play at home and you can walk through the steps, you can practice with your BCBA. And then when you feel comfortable, you're going to improve your quality of life twofold, threefold for yourself and for your child. Awesome. Is
Exactly.
there anything else you think you might want to add for this one?
No, I think we nailed it.
Okay. Let's go to the next question. Okay. This one says, why does my child hit, bite, throw things, and scream when they are upset? Why does my child hit, bite, or throw things when they are upset?
So I
I
want,
think, go
yeah,
ahead.
go. So I want to note something. Those are like things that we look at, right? That's just the behavior. I want to like kind of clarify, when we look at behavior, there's three components of it. There's the antecedent, which happens before the behavior occurs. And then there's also the consequence, which is what happens after the behavior occurs. So, like the specific events. Once we see that specific, the three components, and we see a pattern going on with that specific behavior, then we'll know what the function could be. So, when a parent sends me a video of a kid throwing a tantrum behavior for like, I would say like 30 minutes, I really didn't get much of the video. We would like to see more like, what did you just say before he had that tantrum behavior? And then how did you handle that behavior after, it happened? Because once we see those important factors, like I said, we'll figure out the function. We cannot intervene or analyze a behavior without the function. And that's key. So there's 4 types of functions in ABA. There's attention. So everything, like you said, the biting, the throwing, and being upset, we need to look at that specific behavior, because upset is just a word. What does upset look like? So upset looks like throwing and screaming. I will take that. Okay. So if that's the behavior, what are you doing before? Well, I was on my phone. Okay. You were on your phone. You had the kid that had the behavior. And then what happened after? I approached them. So now every time you're on your phone, your child is learning to do all the steps. I'm going to slap, I'm going to throw, and mom is going to give into my behavior and get me, I want the attention that I want. So that's attention. Then there's access to like things, items, it could be tangibles, it could be activities, it could be social reinforcement. So something, whenever an item's removed or something's removed in their environment, I'm going to learn to hit, throw, and then as a consequence, I get that. I get that back into my environment. So I'll give you an example, an iPad. When you remove the iPad, I'm going to throw, slap, and hit. And then, mom's like, okay, I don't want him to hit me, so let me just give him the iPad. This is a way of communicating, and our kids can't communicate. They have a deficit of that when they were at early age. And so they've learned at an early age, oh, I can't talk, but you know what? I'm going to learn through screaming and inappropriate behavior, because this is how I know. It's quicker and I get things faster. So that's another thing that we come in hand and try to replace those behaviors with appropriate functional communication. The second thing is, the third function is escape. So if you place a demand, they hit slap, and then consequences, the demand is removed. So I'm going to escape every time mom wants me to brush my teeth. I'm going to do all these things because I learned in the past it's worked. So I'm going to continue doing this. And then there's automatic reinforcement, which is there's things that I'm going to do. I'm going to slap my head. I'm going to, flap my hands because it makes me feel good inside. I like this. I like that reinforcement I'm getting. So it's whenever your child is usually alone, no one's intervening. And this is the sensory thing that I like. So like, for example, sometimes we fidget, we bite our nails because we like biting our nails when we get nervous, and it just becomes like a behavior and it's a rigidity, but sometimes it like calms us down. So that's something similar to our kiddos, that when they do things, it makes them feel good or it calms them down. So, so speaking of going back to the question, once we figure all that out, then we can kind of intervene and provide an intervention, proactive intervention, reactive intervention, and then a replacement behavior. It's so important because if you don't have a replacement behavior, then what are we going to replace the bad behavior with? So it's always important to ignore the bad behavior. Don't say no. Don't give into the behavior itself. Always redirect. But once you receive ABA services and parent training, you will get coached in how to do that stuff. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that was a very thorough answer. I don't know what else I could potentially add except for the fact that, yeah, sometimes sometimes it has a really simple answer, and the reason your child kicks and throws and screams and tantrums is because it works. It works for them. It meets their needs. And so a very important part of ABA is breaking that cycle, teaching the child, yes, before when you cried, I used to give you what you wanted. Before when you kicked me, I used to, not make you clean your room anymore. Before when you had a 2-hour tantrum at the toy store, I used to buy you that toy you wanted. No more, right? So part of it is breaking that cycle, that circular cycle that just goes on and on and on for months and years, and just choosing a better way, right? Choosing a better way, teaching the child that it's no longer going to work, and teaching them a replacement behavior, like you said. We do something that we call FCT, which stands for Functional Communication Training. So just teaching your child, if they want something, ask for it. If they need a break, ask for a break. If they, would like some time alone, okay, then ask for some time alone. If they want to play something, ask to play something. But we need to help them build that functional communication repertoire. And then when that increases, then the problem behavior decreases alongside it. And so we always provide an ABA, a treatment package that includes not only decreasing the problem behavior, but also increasing the adaptive behavior that will replace the problem behavior but serves the same function. If you don't teach something that serves the same function, that problem behavior is going to persist. All right. I think that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah.
Ready for the last question?
Let's do it.
Last question. One more. All right. Here we go. Let's see. This one says, is it true that behavior often gets worse before it gets better, and why? That's a good one too.
Yeah. Do you want to answer or should I go? It's up to you.
Yeah, I don't mind going first. So yes, I would say that it almost always is true, right? Behavior almost always does get worse before it gets better. And the reason why is because of extinction. So extinction is a principle of behavior analysis. Again, we're talking about the science of behavior here. And it basically deals with the fact that when behavior has a learning history, or when behavior has worked for many, many times over, right? If the child is 2 years old, then his learning history on this earth, on this planet, with you as mom, with his dad, with whatever the environment is. So he has 2 years worth of learning history. If a child is 3 years old, he has a 3-year learning history or 4-year learning history. Or if he starts a new school and he's been there for 2 weeks, then he has a 2-week learning history with that school, right? And those teachers. So every child's learning history is going to impact their ability to learn something new, or their ability to learn a new potential replacement behavior. And so if your child for 2 years has, for example, tantrumed every time they wanted a dessert after dinner, and all of a sudden you're going to say no because you're going to break that cycle. That's kind of like step one. We're breaking the cycle. The child is going to be shocked, right? It's going to disrupt their system. They're going to be like, what do you mean? No, you always tell me yes. And so they might try screaming a little bit louder. They might try screaming a little bit longer. Maybe they've never slapped you before, but maybe they'll try to slap you. Or maybe they've never banged on the, pantry door before, but maybe they're going to start banging on that pantry door, because extinction means that the behavior is going to increase in intensity, in frequency, and also it's going to become highly variable. So all these a lot of times parents get alarmed. They're like, oh my God, he's never done that before. You're making him worse. Stop. And it's like, well, this is a principle of behavior that we know is very common because it's been studied for decades, right? And so it's very important that before you try any sort of extinction procedure, you have that really open and honest conversation with your BCBA so that they can walk you through what that might look like. Generally, you never want to do an extinction procedure on its own because it does increase behavior and it can become very intense and sometimes uncomfortable for a family, which again goes back to why the problem behavior is then inadvertently reinforced, and that cycle starts all over again. Okay, he's screaming. Oh, but now he's screaming way too loud. Go ahead and give it to him now for sure so he can quiet down. And it's like, no, actually, that's exactly the opposite of what we want to do. We want to guide him through this as gently as possible. And then once he's calm, then we step in and try to redirect and reinforce that behavior, that calmer behavior. And so, yeah, you're going to see a lot of variability, increased intensity, increase in frequency. And that's actually a step that you're moving in the right direction. It's a step that what you're doing is working. And then you should see a pretty steep decline after that, because the child very quickly will learn, my goodness, that is so much effort and it's no longer working. And that's the secret sauce, right? That's that piece where they say, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. Like, I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm kicking, I'm punching, I'm throwing things, and nothing is working. Okay. Then they give up on that. And then they calm down, and then they're teachable. And then you can get at their eye level and say, hey, thank you so much for being calm. I'm here with you. Mommy loves you. You want cookie? Let's practice saying cookie, right? Or whatever. And sometimes you don't even go to that. Sometimes it's just waiting for that calm behavior, and then you provide the cookie for free. It's not free. They calm down. But again, just making that response effort, making sure it matches their level. And that you don't push too hard. Because if they finally calm down and you're trying to get them to say cookie for 30 seconds, cookie, then they're going to be like, right? And then you just get them going all over again. And so that's also really important too. You want to make sure that you are in alignment with what's clinically appropriate for your child as well. You don't want to push too little or too much, because it is a very fine line that we have to very carefully balance for everyone's overall well-being. What do you think, Miriam? Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, it has to be very immediate, like you said, because they're going to eventually understand that, like, hey, me throwing a tantrum and biting and it's going to keep going long lasting, it's not going to work. But something so easy, like you said, cookie or saying the word, it's going to work quicker. So they're going to eventually learn through the cycle of each trial that, hey, this is easier than throwing a tantrum. So I'm just going to just use my words now. And then eventually they're going to continue using the words and staying consistent. But the most important key is that you have to stay consistent. If there's one day that you kind of say, oh my God, it's getting worse, I just have to give in, then that is going to create more problems, and it's going to create more severe intensity of the behavior, because now they're learning, oh, I bit and now I'm throwing things and I'm doing more intense behavior and it's working because you just gave in. So just staying calm, being consistent, and not withdrawing is the to prevent any other intensity of the behavior. That's the way extinction is going to work, and it's going to be effective. It's the testing stage is what I call my the extinction burst, because it's like what you said, you're going to try to do everything you can to get what you want. It's like a vending machine. If you see, like, you put your coin into the vending machine and the candy's stuck, and you try to like press the buttons, and then you kind of kick the machine to see if it's going to come down, or shake the machine, and you try everything you can. You're like, all right, I give up. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to receive that reinforcement. So that it's the basically the same thing what your kid's going through with Extinction Verse. So
Yeah, I guess one last detail I think that I wanted to add is it can be a sensitive topic because I feel like when you, especially when you're supported through something like that, through like putting your child through an extinction procedure with like redirection and prompting and the reinforcement on the other end of it and all that, I think it's easy for the parent experiencing it along with their child to see that it works, because it usually works fairly quickly, right? I think the tricky part is when maybe there's a parent who's not as involved, who maybe wasn't part of that session, part of that, and who didn't get to see the immediate results and who didn't get to witness the improvement firsthand. I feel like that's when it gets tricky, right? Because then it's like oftentimes you have one parent spending a lot of time and effort into getting it right, and then you have a second parent who enters the home who maybe spends more time outside the home setting with work responsibilities or whatnot, and then that parent is not totally on the same page as the original parent and the clinical team, that things can get kind of weird because you have one set of behavior that's being reinforced by one parent and then another set of behavior that's being reinforced by another parent. And that's confusing for a child. And so that reinforcement is going to bounce back and forth, so to speak. Versus if both parents are on the same page and both parents break the cycle and both parents, right, require like the functional communication training or just the calm behavior, then you see behavior improving much, much quicker.
Yeah, overall, it's important for both parents to be on the same page, stay consistent with implementing Extinction, and that's the key. So that's the only way it's going to work, right? Everybody has to be on board, even grandparents. So
And
hopefully,
grandparents.
yes.
We have a lot of grandparents in Miami. Yes.
Yep, they spoil all their grandchildren, and that's the hardest part to train them on. And they're like, "Well, we got it," but the grandparents don't have it, and they're just not. They're just giving in because they're like, "Oh, I did my discipline with you. I'm not going to do it with my grandchild." So
Right.
that's the hard part for everybody to get on board with everything. But
Yeah.
that's why we have parent training consistency.
Yeah.
So
Caregiver training is super important. Oh, sorry. You were going to say something else.
Oh, I was just saying, I hope we answered all the questions that
Okay.
we've gone through. Well, thank you for watching us. We're here with you guys, coffee in hand and heart in the right place. Hope to see you guys next time.
Yes. Be sure to follow us across all platforms, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.